Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video. Welcome back to Monster Hunter Rise, and today we're going to be talking about sharpness, protective polish, and why you should care about these things. With the release of Monster Hunter Rise, I've noticed a significant influx of brand new players into the franchise, which is really cool to see. I see you guys in my stream chats, my YouTube comment sections, asking some questions, and it's really cool that there's so many new people joining us on our journey through Monster Hunter, because that means that Capcom is most likely going to have the budget to continue producing Monster Hunter games for the foreseeable future, which is good because Monster Hunter has definitely grown to become my favorite franchise of all times, and Rise is my favorite Monster Hunter game up until this point, so I can't wait to see what they come up with next. But with a new influx of players, it is also important to make sure that people understand some of the basic things, and with those things, today I would like to highlight sharpness, because I myself haven't talked about sharpness. Sure, there's probably people that have talked about sharpness, but just in case some of you guys haven't heard about sharpness, today we're going to be talking about that. And I'm also going to be talking about why I think that protective polish is potentially the best sharpness maintaining skill in Monster Hunter Rise, which was not the case for me in Monster Hunter World. But before we get deeper into that, let's first start by talking about sharpness. Surely you guys have noticed that whenever you hit a monster, your sharpness goes down. Your sharpness can be, most weapons will have like green, they can go to blue, some weapons will go all the way to white. White being the current maximum sharpness that we can have in Monster Hunter Rise. And white is usually the maximum sharpness that we tend to have in base games, which is what Rise is. Eventually, when Capcom, this hasn't been officially confirmed or anything, but, most likely we are going to get a version called Monster Hunter Rise Ultimate, which is going to have more quests. It's kind of like a definitive edition in a way, and they always do this with Monster Hunter. And you guys are like, oh my god, they're gonna milk it, and etc., etc., etc. Those of you who are newcomers, like, no, you don't understand. When they put out the Ultimate version, you're going to have twice the amount of content than you have by the time that Rise's content cycle ends. Okay, just to give you guys an idea, because that's what we got with Monster Hunter World Iceborne. We got twice the amount of content that we had, and then some, because they also added some additional stuff near the end, which was really, really phenomenal. So when I'm telling you guys that there's going to be like a definitive edition, it just means like you can expect plenty of more content to play when they come up with that particular version, and this is just kind of like part of the Monster Hunter content cycle. But anyways, white is the maximum sharpness that we can currently have. And you guys are wondering, okay, so why do I care about sharpness? Okay, so here's the deal. Sharpness changes the amount of damage that you can actually do. It has a modifier, and that modifier changes depending on the color of your sharpness. So for instance, if your sharpness is red, if your sharpness is red, you should sharpen your weapon, really, let's be completely honest. But if your sharpness is red, the modifier is 0.5. It's just 0.5, not 0.0, it's just 0.5, so 50%. So you're dealing 50% of the damage you should be dealing, so that's bad. If your sharpness is orange, you're at 75, so 75%. If your sharpness is yellow, you're at 1. However, you really don't want to have your sharpness on yellow, because there's like a random chance of you getting hits that deal less damage, so you really don't want to be in yellow. You want to be at the very least in green. Green is 1.05, so that's like an additional 5% damage on top of your regular damage. Blue is 1.20, so that's 20% more damage. White is 1.32. So think of it like this. If you have a weapon and you're like, oh man, I'm going to stack Attack Up 7. Okay, you're going to get all of the armor skills and all of that stuff to take your attack up to max. Attack Up 7 gives you 10% more attack, and it gives you a bonus of plus 10 attack. So to give you an idea, if you were able to raise your sharpness from green to blue, that would instead just give you a flat 20%. So technically speaking, at least as far as I can tell from the math, because I'm not particularly good at math, so you guys can tell me if there's any like hidden formulas in the background, those of you veterans, but basically getting to blue sharpness is actually even better than getting attack up 7. Ideally, you'd want to have both, naturally, but this whole thing is to explain to you guys that sharpness is actually very valuable, and it is not just something that, oh, when my sharpness is green, I can't hit certain monsters in certain zones because my weapon bounces off. No, it also increases the amount of damage that you actually deal. Raw damage, that is, because when it comes to elemental damage, it's different, and you really don't want to care too much about sharpness when it comes to elemental damage. I mean, I can tell you guys that green is 1, blue is like 1.0625, and white is 1.15. So it's not that much for elemental, but when it comes to raw damage, then yeah, sharpness is beast, and getting more sharpness is actually something that you most definitely want to do. Naturally, this also depends on weapon. Like me, I tend to play gunlance. Sharpness clearly not as important there, because a lot of my hits are going to be from shelling, and shelling doesn't care about sharpness. But if you're playing other weapons, like say the longsword, which is what most people tend to play nowadays, yes, then sharpness is going to be extremely important. And now you guys are like, okay, so how do I increase the sharpness of a weapon? Well, there's a skill called Handicraft. And if you get Handicraft, that increases the amount of sharpness that a weapon has. Now, certain weapons will already come with maximum sharpness. Like, for instance, I think a lot of the Tigrex weapons actually come with maximum sharpness. You can tell by just looking at the sharpness gauge and see that it's full all the way in the weapon. So, on those weapons, Handicraft is not going to do anything. But on other weapons, Handicraft will start extending the amount of sharpness that your weapon has, and some weapons will go into blue, other weapons will go all the way into white. So how do you figure this out? Which weapons go to blue, which weapons go to white? Well, equip a set with +5 Handicraft and look at the weapon in the smithy, and it will show you. So Handicraft, the way that it works, it is a tier 3 skill, and it's got 5 levels. So it's a really heavy skill to get. And now you know why. Because if you're able to actually get a higher level of sharpness, it's going to increase your damage significantly. So it's a very, very valuable decoration. It's a very, very valuable skill. So Handicraft is one of the ways that you have of managing and upgrading your sharpness of your weapon. But then there are other skills that kind of like help you maintain sharpness. So I'm sure you will have seen somewhere the Razor Sharp skill, which is a tier 2 decoration, and it has 3 levels, which gives you a 10% chance to proc, 25% chance to proc, and 50% chance to proc. And whenever Razor Sharp procs, basically your weapon does not consume sharpness, which is really, really good. So, you know, whenever you do a hit, there's like a percentage chance that you do not lose sharpness. Then there's Master's Touch, which was added with the 2.0 update. The way the Master's Touch work is if you crit, and if you have maximum level, because it is, once again, tier 2, 3 levels, it is going to give you an 80% chance of you not losing sharpness. So if you're someone that's running a high crit build, then Razor Sharp might be even better. And then there's Protective Polish. And Protective Polish in this game is a tier 2 decoration, also with 3 levels. You can see that there's a little bit of a pattern forming here. Pretty much all of the decorations that help you manage sharpness, they're all tier 2, 3 level decorations, and then you also have Handicraft, which helps you, you know, somewhat maintain sharpness, increase sharpness, however you want to look at it, right? Now, in Monster Hunter World, I was not the biggest fan of Protective Polish, and the reasoning behind it is because I never really liked the idea, okay, so I'll sharpen now, and then I have this tiny window to deal damage in which my sharpness is not going to be affected. So it always felt like there was so much pressure for me to just go after the monsters while that Protective Polish was on, regardless of the fact that I had good openings or not. This time around, things are a little bit different. And why is that? Because during World, whenever it came to filling out tier 1 slots, you would always be pressed to kind of like, oh, I have tier 1 slots. I should put in attack up. I should put in expert decorations. I should put in, you know, things that actually help me with my damage. However, now those decorations are actually all tier 2. So therefore, you have a lot more room in your tier 1 slots, which means you have a lot more room to just put in, you know, speed sharpening without necessarily sacrificing damage. And I'm like, this actually is sounding really good, because in World, I don't think I would ever play with, I'm not sure if I ever did a build around speed sharpening, because I would always want to have like attack up or expert or something like that instead, because these were tier 1 slots. So this time around, the fact that they changed around how the decorations work, it frees you up to have just a lot of quality of life skills. And speed sharpening has definitely been one of the skills that I've been using a lot. Because for those of you that are not aware, when it comes to gun lances, we are the kings of losing sharpness. Like you do one full burst and your sharpness just goes away. It disappears into the ether. That's just kind of like the way this weapon goes. So we're always forced to have things that help us manage the sharpness of the weapon. Otherwise, the weapon becomes damn near unplayable, since we have to sharpen like every 30 seconds. So this time around, I was most of the time playing with Razor Sharp, but yesterday I was like, okay, let's experiment Protective Polish, see how it works over here. And Protective Polish this time around can actually be upgraded to go all the way into 90 seconds. Whereas in World, it capped out at 60 seconds, but then you could increase it a little bit more with Item Prolonger. But at that point, you're talking about, okay, so 3 points for speed sharpening, another 3 points for item prolonger, and then another one for and you're just like, dude. This time around, it's like, no, you get your speed sharpening, and you get your 3 protective polish, and you're done. And speed sharpening isn't even taking up spots for damage, which is really, really good. And you get your 90 seconds. You can also do item prolonger if you want, but item prolonger is a tier 2 decoration, and personally, I wouldn't recommend it, particularly because another main difference from Rise to World is the fact that you have so much more mobility. At least in the Gunlance, I definitely feel that way, because in World, the Gunlance mobility was extremely limited. Even doing, pivot hopping and all that stuff, still extremely limited. And here, you're just like, nah, dude, blast dash, boom, here we go, wire bugs, wee, here we go. So there's just tons and tons of mobility, which allow you to kind of stay on top of the monster. And that kind of makes up for the fact that you have that window of opportunity in which you can actually be dishing out damage to the monster and not losing sharpness. So that turned out to be a massive change for me, and I was just like, dude, I actually really like Protective Polish now. And, even despite the fact that me having a white sharpness gun lance doesn't really matter all that much because melee hits are not that big a deal, but I am still trying to optimize things to be like, no, I want to deal damage with shells and with melee, and one of the best ways of doing it is getting that sharpness and retaining that sharpness, which also keeps me away from sharpening as often as I do. So these are things that I would definitely recommend. Like, seriously, check out Protective Polish and Rise, because the way that skills work now, I think, is much better than it was in World. And I know that people say, oh, in World it was only a tier 2 deco. I know, but it also only lasted 60 seconds, or you could invest, more into speed sharpening, more into item prolonger to get a little bit more time, and I still don't think it was that valuable. I really think that this is much, much better, but that's my opinion. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section below. And if you're new, hopefully you now have a better understanding of how sharpness works. And when we do get Monster Hunter Rise Ultimate, I would expect sharpness to go all the way into purple. But yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know what you guys think about it. Let me know if you guys knew about this information in regards to sharpness. Let me know if you guys are taking a look into Protective Polish, or if you've just been using Master's Touch or Razor Sharp. And yeah, just let me know in the comment section. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe, peace out.